Revenge is a dish best served in the cold, quiet moments when the past finally catches up to the present. Experience the chilling reality of karma and the unwavering weight of justice in our latest series. Hit that subscribe button now and watch the truth unfold.
My name is Audrey Callahan. I'm 29 years old. When I was 23, my mother stood at the podium at my father's retirement dinner in front of 180 colleagues, family friends, and people I had never met and said, "Ray worked for 35 years so this family could have everything. He gave his best to all of us. Well, to most of us." She smiled when she said it, the kind of smile that says, "I'm just being honest," while making sure the room is laughing before you can respond. They laughed. My uncle laughed. My aunt laughed. The woman from my father's office, who I'd met exactly twice, laughed and touched the arm of the person next to her like they were sharing something. I was at the far end of the table, nearest the exit, which I would later understand was not a coincidence. I set down my water glass. I didn't pick it back up. I sat very still for about 3 minutes, and then I stood up, walked to the coat room, put on my jacket, and left the Marriott on Route 9 in Westchester, without saying goodbye to anyone. My mother texted me at 11:47 p.m. "You embarrassed us leaving like that." It was Dad's night. I didn't respond. That night, I drove back to my apartment in Philadelphia, and I did not go home again. Not for 5 years. Then, 9 weeks ago, my cousin sent me a message that said 4 words. Something happened to Becca. They didn't explain. They didn't need to. What they didn't understand was that I had spent 5 years becoming someone my family had no map for. They didn't know about my job, my apartment on Spruce Street, my savings account, my therapist I'd been seeing every other Thursday since 2021. They didn't know that the sister they had spent 23 years building into the family's centerpiece had quietly come apart at the seams in a way nobody had bothered to notice until it was the only thing left to notice. This is what happened when the favorite child broke down so completely that the one they never quite counted called in the only emergency contact who was still willing to pick up. Let me go back. The Callahan family. 44 Fenwick Road, Larchmont, New York. Gray colonial with black shutters. A garden my mother tended like it was a second job. My father, a logistics director for a mid-size shipping company. My mother, a part-time bookkeeper and full-time manager of how things looked. 2 daughters. From the street, a family that Christmas carded well. From inside, a system with a very clear hierarchy that nobody ever named out loud. My sister Rebecca was born in 1991. I came along in 1994. 3 years apart, but in terms of treatment, it was a different country. Becca graduated at the top of her class from the public high school in Larchmont. I graduated with a 3.1 GPA and a part-time job at a deli counter that my mother referred to as Audrey's little thing at dinner parties. Becca went to Syracuse on a partial academic scholarship. I went to a state school 2 hours from home that my mother described to her friends as a perfectly fine school. Audrey just didn't test well under pressure. Becca got an apartment in Manhattan at 22, and my parents co-signed her lease and paid her first 3 months of rent. I got a form letter rejection when I asked if they could lend me the security deposit for a place in Philly, so I borrowed it from a friend and paid her back over 8 months. But the achievements were never the real thing. The real thing was smaller and happened every day. I started writing things down when I was 15. I kept a list in the Notes app on my phone. Later in a small notebook I bought at a drugstore. I needed something concrete to hold on to because my memory alone didn't feel trustworthy. I kept wondering if I was making it up. If I was being dramatic. If it was actually as unbalanced as it felt. The numbers made it harder to argue with. How many times my mother asked Becca about her week at Sunday dinner versus asking me, over 6 months, 43 to 11. How many times she interrupted me mid-sentence to redirect the conversation to my sister, 22. How many times my father said your sister, when explaining an achievement as though the achievement was a standard I was expected to meet? 19 times in 3 months. Numbers didn't flinch. Numbers didn't say you're being too sensitive. Numbers just sat there. The year of my father's retirement dinner told the full story without needing any of those numbers. My father retired in October 2018 after 35 years with the same company. The dinner was at a Marriott banquet room, organized by my mother. Attended by about 180 people. My parents had spent 3 weekends planning it. My mother and Becca had driven to a florist in White Plains twice for centerpieces. They'd hired a videographer. My mother had written a speech. I had found out about the dinner 6 days before it happened. My mother called to tell me the date, the time, the dress code. That was the entirety of the call. When I offered to help with anything, she said, "We've got it handled. Just show up by 6:30. I drove up from Philadelphia the morning of. I wore a navy dress I'd bought specifically for the occasion. I got there at 6:22 p.m. My seat was at the end of a long table near the door to the hallway. The guests closest to me were 2 of my father's former coworkers who spent most of the evening talking to each other, and my great-aunt who kept calling me Rachel. I didn't correct her. I just kept refilling her water glass. My mother's speech was the 4th of the evening. She was good at this. Composed. Warm on the surface. The kind of speaker who knew how to work a room without appearing to try. She talked about my father's work ethic. His integrity. His 6 a.m. alarm for 35 years. She talked about the vacations they'd taken, the house they'd built, the family we made together. Then she said, "Ray worked for 35 years so this family could have everything. He gave his best to all of us. Well, to most of us." She smiled at Becca when she said it. Becca, seated at the main table to my father's left, smiled back and shook her head a little. The way you do when someone says something flattering that you want to appear modest about. I understood immediately. I was the most of us. I was the asterisk in the sentence. 180 people in a banquet room, and my mother had just announced it cleanly with a smile, and everyone had laughed, including the woman from my father's office who I'd met twice. I counted the laughter. 12 seconds. I counted because it was the only thing I could do with my hands that didn't involve standing up and leaving immediately, which is what every part of me wanted to do. I stayed for 3 more minutes. Then I left. My mother caught me in the lobby, her heels on the marble floor before her voice. Audrey, wait." I turned around. She looked the way she always looked when I had inconvenienced her. Not worried, not concerned, but faintly irritated at the interruption. "Where are you going?" "Home." "You can't leave, it's your father's dinner." "Mom, you just told 180 people that Dad gave his best to most of the family." She exhaled through her nose. It was a joke. I was being self-deprecating. About me. "You're being oversensitive. You always do this at family events. Make it about yourself." There it was. "You always do this." The sentence that ends the conversation before it starts. "I'm not doing anything," I said. "I'm going home. If you walk out of here, you are going to upset your father on his night. Good night, Mom." She stood there with her arms crossed while I pushed through the lobby door. She did not follow me to the parking lot. I drove out of Westchester, listening to nothing. No music, no podcast, just road noise, and I cried somewhere around the Tappan Zee Bridge, the ugly kind, both hands on the wheel. I got back to my apartment in Philadelphia at 1:15 a.m. There were no missed calls. 1 text from my mother at 11:47, nothing from my father. Nothing from Becca. I checked my phone 4 times before I went to bed. Then I stopped checking. I blocked my mother's number first, then my father's, then Becca's. I changed my number 2 weeks later, transferred my gym membership to a location closer to work. removed my home address from every document I had connected to my parents' accounts, and sent a forwarding address to only 2 people. My cousin Tam, who had texted me, "Are you okay? That was awful," at 10,053 the night of the dinner, and my college friend Jody, who had known about my family long enough to not ask me to explain. Those 2 people became my entire family. It was enough. It had to be. The following spring, I got a better job offer. A marketing firm based in Philadelphia, content and communications, $51,000 to start. I took it. By the end of 2019, I was making $58,000 and had 3 people on my team. By 2021, I was a senior strategist at $72,000. I paid off my car in full. I paid off my student loans. All of them $24,000 on a Wednesday morning in August 2022. I sat at my kitchen table and stared at the confirmation email for a long time before I got up and made coffee and went to work like any other day. I told no one. There was no one at home to tell. That was the loneliest and most complete feeling I'd ever had at the same time. I started therapy in 2021. My therapist's name is Dr. Whitmore. Thursday afternoons every other week. $90 with insurance. The first session she asked me what I wanted to accomplish. I thought about it for a while. "I want to stop being surprised," I said, "when things go wrong with my family. I want to stop being surprised every time." What would it feel like to not be surprised? Like I'd finally believed what I already knew. She wrote something down. That was the beginning. I built a life that fit me. I ran a half marathon in November 2022. I adopted a cat named Fig from a shelter on Washington Avenue. Gray, one-eyed, uninterested in being held. Perfect. I had people. My neighbor Kira, who left homemade soup outside my door when I had COVID, and never asked to be thanked for it. My coworker Dominic, who sent me long voice memos about terrible television and made me laugh on bad days. My friend Simone from my running group, who had cut her own family off years earlier and never once made me feel like there was something wrong with me for doing the same. I dated occasionally. Nothing serious for a long time. Then, in 2023, someone named Patrick, 24, taught high school history, noticed things, and we were together for almost a year. He told me once, "You apologize before you say what you actually think." Not meanly, just noticing. I brought it to therapy and we spent 4 sessions on it. I was still undoing the grammar of a household where my opinions had arrived pre-discounted. Patrick and I ended things in February 2024. Not badly, just not quite right. But he had handed me something. An awareness that I was still, in small ways, performing the version of myself my family had decided I was. The one who didn't quite deserve the full sentence. By early 2025, I had mostly sealed the gaps. Good work, good people. Fig on the couch, Thursday therapy, morning runs. I had gone whole months without thinking about any of them. I thought I was done with it. I was not. On a Tuesday night in February 2025, at 8:14 p.m., while I was on my couch with Fig watching something I'd already half forgotten, my phone buzzed with a message from my cousin Tam. A number I still had saved. She didn't usually text late. "Something happened to Becca. Can you call me?" I set the phone down on the cushion. I looked at it. I picked it up and typed back, "What kind of something?" She called me before I finished the question. Becca's husband, a man named Griffin who I'd met 4 times including the wedding, had asked for a divorce in October 2024. He cited, Tam said, growing apart, but she hesitated in a way that told me there was more. I asked her directly. "Becca hasn't been okay for a while," Tam said slowly. "Like, a while. I think it started during COVID, maybe earlier. She was drinking a lot. Griffin tried to get her to see someone and she wouldn't. After he left, she stopped going to her job. She worked in PR, pretty senior. She just stopped showing up to things. Her boss called my mom at one point because they couldn't reach her. Where is she now? Her apartment. She's still in the apartment? I don't know if she's paying rent. I think your parents are covering it. I went to see her last month and she buzzed me in, but she didn't open the door all the way. She looked really bad, Audrey. The apartment was bad. I could see bottles from the doorway. I felt my jaw tighten. Have my parents gotten her help? Tam went quiet for a moment. They've been going over. Your dad runs errands for her. Your mom brings food. But they keep telling everyone she's taking a sabbatical, that the divorce hit her hard and she needs time. Your mom told someone at book club that Becca is doing consulting work from home. They're not getting her into treatment. They keep saying she's not ready. She's not ready. Or they're not ready for people to know. Tam didn't answer. She didn't need to. I knew this exact calculus. The Callahan family presentation, the gray colonial with black shutters, the mother who tended her garden like a second job. An addicted daughter did not fit the framing, so they would manage the framing instead of the daughter. They had been doing this their whole lives, just never with stakes this high. Why are you calling me? I asked. Becca and I haven't spoken in 5 years. She has your number. She has your mom's number. I know, but Audrey, she asked about you. A few months ago when I saw her, she asked if I ever heard from you. She said she didn't understand why you stopped talking to her. She thinks you just left. That landed somewhere specific. She thinks I chose this. Yeah, I think she does. Your mom told her. She told Becca that you'd been having a hard time and needed space from the family, that you'd reach out when you were ready. I put the phone against my shoulder for a moment and breathed. She told Becca it was my choice. Yes. Did Becca ever try to contact me? After I left, Tam was quiet in the specific way of someone choosing their words. I know she tried calling you a couple times early on. Your old number. It was disconnected. I changed it. Right, and okay, there's something else. I don't know how to say this exactly. Becca told me once that she had written you a letter, like an actual letter. Maybe 8 months after the dinner. She gave it to your mom to mail. I already knew what she was going to say. Your mom told her she'd sent it. Becca never heard back. She assumed you'd gotten it and didn't respond. I sat very still on my couch with Fig warm against my leg and the TV still going in the background, and I let that settle. Becca had written me a letter. My mother had taken it and done nothing. Or thrown it away, or never mailed it. And then told Becca it had been sent, and Becca had spent years believing I'd received her letter and hadn't bothered to write back. 5 years of silence built on a letter that never moved. I called Dr. Whitmore's after-hours line. We talked for 45 minutes. She asked me the same question she asked every time I was at a decision point. What do you actually want here? I said, I want to know if I can walk back into that and come out the same person. She didn't say anything. I think that's the real question, I said. Not whether I should. Whether I can. She still didn't say anything. She'd learned by now when to let me get there myself. 3 days later, I called my mother. Her number was 5 years old. It still worked. She answered on the third ring, and her voice had that precise, practiced levelness that told me she had been half expecting this call for a while. Audrey, I heard about Becca. Who told you? That doesn't matter. Tell me what's actually happening. What followed was 25 minutes of the careful version. She minimized. She contextualized. She said adjusting and processing and not herself lately. I let her go for a while. Then I interrupted. Mom, is Becca drinking every day? A pause. She's been struggling with that, yes. Has she left her apartment in the last 2 weeks? A longer pause. We don't believe so. Has anyone suggested inpatient treatment? The longest pause. Your father thinks she needs to feel supported, not pushed. I pressed my eyes shut. Becca is an alcoholic. That's not a character judgment. That's a medical description of what's happening. She needs treatment, not food deliveries and a cover story. We are doing the best we can. You're managing the story. That's what you do. You did it when I left. You told her I needed space. You took her letter and didn't mail it. Silence. Mom, we didn't. We were trying to protect her. You had made it very clear you didn't want contact. And we thought sending the letter would just... You thought it would make me look better than I deserved to look. More silence. You needed her to think I was the one who walked away, because the alternative was explaining what actually happened at that dinner. And you weren't going to do that. Her voice went tight. Audrey, this isn't the time. Here's what's going to happen. I kept my voice flat. I'm going to fly to New York. I'm going to see Becca. If she's willing to get help, I'm going to find a program and help her get there. You and Dad are going to pay for it. All of it. Whatever it costs, no questions. You're going to stay out of the facility selection. You're not going to be involved in her treatment unless she decides she wants that. And you're going to stop telling people she's on a sabbatical. That ends now. Quiet. We're her parents. I know. And you told 180 people at Dad's retirement dinner that he gave his best to most of his family. And then you let your other daughter believe for 5 years that I abandoned her on purpose. So right now you don't get to use "we're her parents" as a credential. Tell me you understand what I'm asking. My mother didn't respond immediately. When she did, her voice was smaller. I understand. Good. I'll text you the details. I booked a flight for the following Friday. Philadelphia to LaGuardia, 7,005 a.m., $214 round trip. I texted Tam, I'm coming. She sent back 2 words. Thank you. I told Kira I'd be gone for a weekend. I told Dominic, in broad terms, where I was going. He said, come back intact. Simone said, you don't owe anyone anything. But I think you already know that, and you're going anyway, so be careful. I landed at 8:40 a.m. I rented a car at the terminal. I sat in the rental lot for about 4 minutes before I started driving. I drove to my parents' house first. I needed to see them in person before I saw Becca. Needed to have that conversation with a door I could walk out of. 44 Fenwick Road. The black shutters were the same. The garden was bare for winter, but the beds were edged and mulched the way my mother always kept them. A house that had spent 20 years looking like nothing complicated lived inside it. My father answered the door. He looked older in the specific way of people who had been worrying about something for a long time without saying so out loud. He stepped aside to let me in without saying anything. My mother was already in the kitchen doorway, hands folded. She looked smaller. There were lines near her eyes I didn't remember. I did not hug either of them. I sat at the kitchen table and I kept my coat on. Tell me all of it, I said. Not the version you've been telling people. The real version. It took 40 minutes. My father talked in the way he always had. Sequence, facts, minimal affect. My mother occasionally filled in details she wished she didn't have to give me. The drinking had started around 2022, they thought, maybe earlier. Griffin had called them in the spring of 2024 and told them he was filing. By then, Becca had missed enough work that her company had placed her on a performance plan. After the divorce, she had stopped going in entirely. They had covered for her. They had called her supervisor. They had told Becca she just needed to get through the adjustment period, that it would stabilize. You knew for over a year, I said. You were trying to keep it quiet. You were protecting the way it looked. And it got worse. My father's jaw tightened. We didn't want to humiliate her. You wanted to avoid being humiliated. There's a difference. Neither of them spoke. "I need to ask you something," I said. "And I need you to hear it, not respond to it. Just hear it." They waited. At Dad's retirement dinner. Mom's speech. "Do you remember what you said?" My mother looked at the table. My father looked at the wall. "You said Dad gave his best to most of the family." In front of 180 people. I was sitting at the end of the table near the exit, and you made a joke that I was the exception. And when I left, you told me I was being oversensitive. And then you told Becca I needed space. And you took the letter she wrote me and never sent it. My voice was steady. I had said versions of this to Dr. Whitmore enough times that the words had lost their jagged edges. What remained was just the shape of the truth. She spent 5 years thinking I abandoned her. While she was falling apart, you let her believe her sister didn't care enough to write back. That's what I need you to hear. Not your version of why you did it. Just what it did. My mother was crying quietly into a paper towel. My father sat completely still. "I'm not here for an apology," I said. "I'm not here because I've resolved how I feel about any of this. I'm here for Becca. When she's stable and in treatment, I'll figure out what happens next between all of us. But today, you need to sit with what I just told you. The real version." I stood up. "I'm going to see her now." I drove 20 minutes to Becca's apartment building in White Plains, a newer building with a glass lobby and a call box. I buzzed her unit. Nothing. I buzzed again. A long pause, then her voice through the speaker, rough in a way that had moved past tired into something I recognized from Tam's description. A voice that had been through a lot of days that were all the same. "Who is it?" "It's Audrey." Silence. Long enough that I started to think she wasn't going to respond. "That's not. How do you have this number?" "Tam. I'm here. Let me up." The door clicked. Her unit was on the 3rd floor. The hallway smelled like artificial lemon, and something underneath it that lemon couldn't cover. I knocked on 3F. A pause. Footsteps. The door opened about 3 inches, with the chain still on. I saw one eye, half a face. I had known my sister as put together. Becca had always been the kind of person who coordinated things. Her clothes, her apartment, her dinner parties, her appearance. One daughter is a doctor. A meaty, the Pudfridge. The opposite of coordination. Her hair was pulled back in a way that suggested it hadn't been intentional. Her face was pale and the circles under her eyes had moved past tired into structural, like they'd become part of her face. She was wearing a sweatshirt I recognized from 10 years ago. "You look different," she said. "Let me in." The chain came off. The door opened. The apartment had good bones. High ceilings, nice windows, clearly expensive ones. The curtains were drawn and the light that came through was thin and gray. There were bottles on the coffee table. I counted 4 without trying. Take-out bags on the counter, the kind that had been there long enough to smell. Her couch had a blanket on it shaped like someone had been living there. The kitchen had dishes in it that weren't soaking, just sitting. She sat on the edge of the couch. I sat on the floor across from her. Not on the chair, not on the couch, on the floor. Because I needed her to understand. I was not here to evaluate her apartment or her choices. I was here to be in the room. She looked at me for a while without speaking. "Mom called you," she finally said. "Tam texted first. Then I called Mom." She made a short, flat sound that was not quite a laugh. "Of course she did. I need you to know something before anything else," I said. "I didn't leave because of you." She looked at me. "I know you've been told I needed space. That's not what happened. I left because of what Mom said at Dad's dinner, and I cut contact with all of them. I blocked your number too, and then I changed mine. I didn't know you were trying to reach me." "I called your number," she said. "It was disconnected." "I know. I changed it 2 weeks after I left. I thought that was because of me. It wasn't. She pulled her sleeves down over her hands. I wrote you a letter. I know. Mom told me she sent it. Becca looked up sharply. She didn't send it. Becca looked up sharply. She didn't send it, I said. I never got it. She kept it or threw it out. I don't know which, but I never got it, and I never knew you'd written it until 4 days ago. The expression that moved across her face was something I had not seen on her before. Becca had always performed composure, the way our mother did. Smooth, surface level, the face you present when the face underneath is too expensive to show. What I was seeing now was the face underneath. She looked like someone who had just been handed back something they'd buried. 5 years? She said softly. I thought you got it and didn't respond. I know. I thought you hated me. I know. We sat with that for a while. The truth of it taking up the room the way a large piece of furniture does. You can be in the space with it, but you have to move around it carefully. Do you know what it was like? She said eventually. Her voice was quiet. Being the one they're proud of? I shook my head. It's like... She stopped. Started again. It's like being the thing they built to prove something. Every time something went well for me, it wasn't just good. It was evidence. Evidence that they were right. Evidence that they'd done something correctly. And if something went wrong, it wasn't just a setback. It was... Their whole argument collapsed. Their whole investment. She looked at the window, the thin gray light coming through the curtain. Griffin said for 2 years that I needed help. I kept saying I was fine. Because if I wasn't fine, I wasn't the thing they'd built. And if I wasn't that thing, I didn't know what I was. I thought about my green notebook. My tally of names at dinner tables. We had both been keeping track of the same household in different ways. I had counted to survive it. She had performed to survive it. Neither of us had come out whole. I'm not going to pretend I wasn't angry, I said. I was, for years. At you partly, for not saying anything at the dinner. For being the name she mentioned. But I also know you were in the same house I was. The cage was just shaped differently. She looked at me. Her eyes were wet, but she wasn't crying yet. I'm sorry, she said. For the dinner. For all the dinners. I knew how they treated you, and I let it happen because it was easier for me if I didn't make it a thing. I didn't rush to say it was okay. It wasn't entirely okay. But I let her sorry be there without filling it in. I found a program, I said. Residential, 45 days, in Connecticut. Good reviews, evidence-based, medical detox, and individual therapy. The intake person's name is Dr. Farrow. She's expecting my call. It's $22,000. Mom and Dad are paying, all of it. You don't need to think about the money. I held her gaze. But I need to know if you're willing to go. Not for them. Not for Griffin or your job, or whatever your life looked like before. For you. Because I think you know you're worth putting back together. I think somewhere you know that. I need you to say it. She was quiet for a long time. Long enough that I thought she might say no. And I was ready for that too. Then, I don't know if I can do it. You don't have to know. You just have to go. She looked at me. Then, she looked at the window. Then, she looked at the floor. Okay, she said. Very quietly. Like it cost her something. I called Dr. Farrow that afternoon. There was a spot available the following Monday. I told Becca to pack for 6 weeks, and she stared at me like I'd said something in a foreign language. And then, she went to her bedroom, and I heard drawers opening. I drove her to our parents' house to get a few things she'd left there. My mother hovered near the hallway. My father stood by the living room doorway and didn't quite know where to put himself. When Becca came back downstairs with a bag, my mother reached for her arm and said something quiet, and my father started to speak. Becca looked at him and said, Not right now, Dad. He stopped. He actually stopped. I drove Becca to a hotel near the Westchester airport that night. She didn't want to be at our parents' house, and I wasn't offering my own space. I needed to be intact to do this right. And intact meant keeping some walls up. We got room service. She had soup and half a piece of bread and told me about the last year in pieces, stopping and starting, the way you talk when you've been alone with something for too long. Around midnight, she said, "I can't believe you came." I almost didn't. Why did you? I thought about it, because I decided you were drowning in something that wasn't entirely your fault. And I was the only one who wasn't going to make it about how it reflected on them. She was quiet. Then, "Do you think we can be okay? You and me?" I thought about that the way Dr. Whitmore taught me, honestly, not optimistically. "I think we can build something real," I said. "Not what we should have had, but real. That's better than the other thing." She nodded slowly. "I'd like that." Monday morning, I drove her to the airport at 5:30 a.m. Her flight to Hartford connected through Newark. We stood at the security entrance and I handed her an envelope, the facility's information, her insurance cards, 2 emergency contacts, Dr. Farrow's direct number. She held it against her chest for a moment, both hands. Then she hugged me. She was thinner than I expected, her shoulder blades close to the surface, and she smelled like hotel shampoo, and underneath, that something she would need time to shed. I held on. "You don't have to wait for me," she said. "I know. I mean it. You built a whole life without us. Don't put it on hold." "I'm not putting it on hold. I'm just not going anywhere." She pulled back. Her face was doing the thing where someone is trying very hard not to cry in an airport. "I know that face. I've made it. Are we going to be okay? The whole thing. The family." I thought about my mother, at her podium in the Marriott banquet room. My father in his chair looking at the wall. The letter that never got mailed. The 5 years. "I don't know," I said honestly. "For you and me, I think yes. For the rest of it, I'm still deciding." She nodded. She picked up her bag. She turned once at the security line and raised her hand. I raised mine back. I watched her until she was through. That was 9 weeks ago. Becca has been in treatment for 9 weeks. She calls me on Sundays at 6 p.m. That's when the program schedules personal calls. We talk for half an hour, sometimes longer. The conversations are still careful, still learning where the edges are. But they're honest. Not performed, not arranged to reflect well on anyone. Just 2 people from the same wreckage, trying to figure out who they actually are to each other. She's asked about our parents twice. I told her both times that's yours to work through, and whatever you decide, I'll respect it. I'm not carrying that answer for either of us. My parents have texted 4 times since February. Short, asking for updates. I've told them she's doing well. The program is good. Leave it at that. My father sent one longer message. "We'd like to talk when you're ready." I read it and set the phone down and didn't respond. I haven't decided yet. That's not avoidance. It's accuracy. I genuinely haven't decided. My life in Philadelphia is where I left it. Fig is on the couch. Kira left a plant outside my door when I got home because she waters it when I travel and wanted an excuse to give it back. Dominic sent me 3 voice memos about a documentary series I have to watch. Thursday appointments continue. 2 weeks ago, Dr. Whitmore asked me, "What did you learn about yourself in all of this?" I thought about it for a long time. "I learned that I could go back to the thing that made me feel small," I said, "and not become small again. I could sit in that kitchen and say the true thing, and then drive away and still know exactly who I was when I got on the plane home." She wrote something down. "That's not a small thing," she said. "No," I said. "It's the whole thing." Becca gets out in April. She's already talking to a therapist near White Plains about outpatient follow-up. She called last Sunday and said, "I've been thinking about why it mattered that you came." She paused. "I think it mattered because you had every reason not to. And you came anyway. That means it was a choice, and that means it was real." I said, "It was real." She was quiet for a moment. "I want to actually know you," she said. "Not the sister I was supposed to have. Actually you." I said, "I'd like that. Let's take it slow." People ask me sometimes, in my own head at 2 in the morning, in the middle of a run, at the end of a therapy session, whether I did the right thing. Whether going back meant excusing what happened. Whether showing up was the same as saying it was fine. It wasn't the same. It was never fine. I went back because my sister was drowning in a current our family built, and I was the only person standing on solid ground who was willing to reach in without a story to protect. I didn't go home. That house was never home. I went to pull someone out of the water, and then I drove to the airport and flew back to my apartment and my cat and my green plant by the window that Kira watered while I was gone. My name is Audrey Callahan. I'm 29 years old. I was the asterisk at the end of the sentence. The most of us, the one seated near the exit. I am not an asterisk. I never was. I just had to drive far enough away to finally believe it, and I had to go back once, not for them, but for the truth that had been buried in a letter that never got mailed, to know it all the way down. And if you are someone's most of us right now, the one they put nearest the door, the one who got the smaller room and the offhand answer and the joke at the dinner that everyone laughed at. But you, I want you to know something. Their joke was never your definition. Build something they couldn't have imagined for you. And when the day comes that they need you back, you will know exactly what to do, and exactly who you are when you do it. That's the whole thing. That's all of it. I've thought a lot about why things unfolded the way they did. Not in a looking for someone to blame way. I did enough of that in my 20s. More in the way you look back at a road you've already driven and start to see the signs you missed the first time, or the ones that were there all along and you just didn't know how to read them yet. What happened to Becca wasn't random. It was the end of a very long chain of causes that started long before either of us could name them. She was built into a role. The proof, the evidence, the thing the family pointed to when they needed to believe they'd done something right. And when you're built into a role that tightly, you don't get to fail. You don't get to be uncertain or lost or human in the ways that require help. You get to perform or you get to collapse. There's no middle ground. That's not bad luck. That's a structure. And structures produce outcomes, whether anyone intends them to or not. I used to think the opposite was true for me. That being the overlooked one was only a disadvantage. And for a long time it was. But the thing about not being the proof of anything is that eventually you get to just be a person. You build something because you want it, not because it's expected. You make choices because they're yours. When I paid off my loans on that Wednesday morning and didn't tell anyone, that silence wasn't sad. It was mine. Nothing about that accomplishment belonged to anyone else, and nobody could take credit for it, and nobody could collapse if it had gone differently. That's a kind of freedom I didn't recognize as freedom until much later. What I know now is that the people who hurt us are almost always operating from their own unexamined fear. My mother's joke at that podium wasn't cruelty for its own sake. It was a woman who had spent her entire adult life managing appearances, telling a room full of people that she knew the difference between her children, and choosing, in that moment, to make that knowledge funny instead of true. It was fear dressed as humor. Fear that someone might look too closely. Fear that the picture might not hold. That doesn't excuse it. I want to be clear about that. Understanding why someone did something is not the same as deciding it was acceptable. I went back for Becca because she was drowning, and I could reach her. Not because I'd decided everything was fine. And not because I believed my parents had earned the version of the story where it all works out. They hadn't. They still haven't, as far as I can tell. But here's what I've come to understand about integrity. About actually having it, not just aspiring to it. It's not something you perform when people are watching. It's the thing that stays consistent when they're not. I had every reason to stay in Philadelphia. Every reason. And the fact that I went anyway, not for my parents, not to prove anything, but because Becca was a person I had decided was worth showing up for. That was mine. That decision cost me something real and I made it anyway. That's the only definition of integrity I've found that holds up. I'm still working on the rest. Still figuring out what I owe, what I don't, and what I want the next version of this family to look like, if there is one. Becca calls on Sundays. That's real. Everything else is still being decided. And that's okay. You don't have to have all of it figured out at once. You just have to keep making the choices you can live with when you're alone in your car at 1 in the morning with no one watching. That's the whole thing.